Welcome to this edition of the Z-Files. Cal Zethmar here at City Hall in Crestview, and we'll be doing probably quite a few of our interviews as we talk to city officials during this month, next month. We're going to talk a lot about this particular piece of sheets of paper here called a city charter. Now, you can go to cityofcrestview.org, and if you work your way through the buttons and things, you'll get to where you can read that whole thing and see what the current charter, every city has to, or county has to have one. Our guest today is Miss Betsy Roy, who is our Crestview City Clerk. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Or morning for our radio listeners who are going to hear this on Saturday mornings at 7:06. Otherwise, it'll be on the WAAZ, the Good Country website. You can click to the Z-Files there. You can go to my Facebook page, facebook.cal.zethmar, I guess, so you get there, and it'll all be available. And the other day, somebody said, well, when did you start doing these things? And I got to looking back through my files, and I actually have almost all the audio files and some notes on when I started. The very first broadcast I did like this was January 2nd, 2009. A brand new county commissioner, Wayne Harris, just had been elected that fall. And since then, this is program number 439.
Wow.
At 52 a year ever since 2009. And I don't know how many people I have interviewed in that many years, but I'm going to guess that it's more than 400 because sometimes we would have 2 or 3 people on a particular program. And that is 182 hours of airtime, almost 11,000 minutes of airtime, not counting the time to do the interview and to edit and all the other stuff that goes or prepare for them. So I would have to say we devote a good bit of our airtime and our to our community. And this current topic is about we're going to talk about the city government as it is now, what it could be in the future. If you look at some information that I have, every year the University of West Florida does a circle study for me. And so within 5 miles of where we are now, or just about, there are actually over 41,000 people. Now, how many live inside the city limits? Give or take a few dozen.
We're right around 23,000 now.
23,000 in Crestview. And within 10 miles, there are almost 55,000 people. And really, now within the 5 mile, everybody in that 5 mile circle just crosses the PJ traffic light corner. So there's still some people beyond that little part. So we're
actually in the city, south of the PJ circle.
Sure.
So
yeah. So in reality, we are a city of really. Come over this way closer so we can see. Keep you in the camera range there.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Mike says you can sit this close. Okay. But anyway, we are a city really of over 50,000 people who probably have a Crestview mailing address and in their on their driver's license and everything else. And Crestview, like everybody else, is growing. And within Okaloosa County, it is getting a larger share of the growth, for the sheer fact that the land at the south end is, you pretty well got to tear something down and build something taller to use the space that is down there. So several times over the years, even since I've been here, I think it's been at least once or twice on the ballot to change the form of the city government. Right. Now, Crestview's government is unique. How many cities have you found in Florida alone that have a structure like we have, where you have a mayor that has departments, the council has departments, and you have an elected city clerk?
Right. Now, as far as the elected city clerk goes, it's between 10 and 12 out of the over 500 cities that there are. And that's a very unique position, is an elected city clerk. Of course, most mayors are elected, council members are elected. I don't know exactly how many have our form of government. Most of them are smaller. I think we're the largest city that still has the council week, what they call council week mayor form of government. As far as the city clerk's responsibilities, they vary from doing, like I do, a lot, to doing very small percentages depending upon how their government works, whether they have a city manager, whether they don't, or anything else. So the responsibilities of the city clerk fluctuate based on the type of government that they have.
In the case of Crestview, has had an elected city clerk, and as we know in the old-timers who I can talk to, like Ellis Connor and Jerry Milligan, depending on who the city clerk was, sometimes they would be a strong person and almost would have run all the stuff that the city administrator might have done. At somewhere along the way, the position of an administrative assistant to the council came along, and they also ran certain departments, and that has changed over the years. So now you have an administrative assistant to the council, and which really takes care of clerical stuff for the council, doesn't manage anything other than, in our case, this person, Teresa, also serves managing the growth management department, and that kind of was under at least the last couple of people who filled that administrative kind of position here.
Yeah, the growth management, when I came over, of course, we lost the growth management administrative assistant a couple of months after I started, and I actually had growth management and administrative assistant and city clerk until Ms. Galliard was appointed, I believe, in fall of 2014. So I had it from the summer of 12 until the fall of 2014. So that was added responsibility to a brand new person in a position who was just learning it. But it's they always say that doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. So
You have survived it.
I have survived.
Now, uniquely, the technical legal qualifications per charter to be a city clerk in Crestview are what?
To be elected.
That's it.
That's it.
To be a voter and be living in the city.
Yes.
There are no actual job descriptions in the
Well, there's a job description, but it's an elected position, so there's no educational requirements, anything like that. I felt like when this job came open in the fall of 2011 that the business background that I had at that point would be beneficial to the city. And of course, you come in and you're like, nobody knows what this job is until they get into it. I mean, there's no job description in the world that will tell you everything you have to do on a daily basis, because you can go from settling an HR dispute to settling a water dispute to settling a payroll dispute to settling a accounts payable dispute, all within the same hour. And that takes a little bit of finagling and a little just stopping, stepping back, and thinking through things logically. But I've always taken the approach that I'm going to do it what's right within the laws of the city. Sometimes the hardest thing you ever have to do is say no. And this job and the finance job are we're kind of the no people. We have to tell people no because A, it doesn't meet the charter, it doesn't meet the ordinance, or you can't bypass the ordinances, which are the laws of the city. You can't make an exception for this person or this person because you feel sorry for them. As much as it hurts sometimes, you have to follow the laws of the city.
Now, in our city, the city clerk has the building side of the utility department. The physical plant maintenance comes under Wayne Steele's area, but the sending out the bills, making sure the meters are read, and that the bills are collected and the money put in the bank, all that falls on your department.
Right, under the utility billing department. Right when I started, the utility meter readers came under the utility billing. That right before that, and I think that happened like 2 months after I started, the motion was made for them to go under the utility department. Before that, those were also handled at public services. But it's a much easier mesh when the same people that are doing the billing, answering the questions, sending out people to check meters are the same people who are supervising those meter readers. It makes it a lot easier, I think, simpler.
And that's one area where occasionally we'll see people come to the council and want exceptions or waivers or changes on water bills. That money is all very specifically pledged to certain bond issues that paid the money to build the systems or add on to it, and you can't make those exceptions by law.
Now, the only exception that we can make, and again, this falls back under Mr. Steele more than it does me, if water goes through the meter but doesn't enter the sewer system. So say you're connected to the city sewer, which is not, the majority of the city is not connected to the sewer. But if you're connected to the city sewer system and you have a leak on the customer side of the meter, we can make a adjustment to the sewer costs. Can't make adjustment to the water costs because that water has gone through the meter and is no longer consumable. But if it hasn't gone through the piping of the house and gone into the sewer system to be processed, then we can make an adjustment on the sewer side of the bill because it hasn't gone through, it hasn't entered, hasn't gone out to the wastewater treatment plant to be adjusted. But if they don't have a sewer system and they only have a septic system, then there can't be an adjustment made because, again, by our ordinances, we can only adjust the sewer system in regards to leaks.
And of course, some people who do a lot of sprinkling of irrigation or pools, they can put a separate, there's a way they can get that
But a
meter.
separate irrigation meter.
Right, irrigation meter for that. So let's show you again these charts, and I'll put these up here, and then I'll bring them up computer-wise on the screen for those of you who are watching it. This is the current Crestview form. In Crestview, the mayor is elected by the people, supervises the fire and the police department, and names those two chiefs, who in turn hire all of the people who work in their departments. The city council administers the administrative assistant, growth management, public services, and public library. And then the finance department utility billing goes to Miss Roy under the city clerk's office. How many total people now in all of your areas?
10 to 12, because we also have, well, probably closer to 14, because we have my administrative assistant, plus we do the facility rentals here for all that, and the business tax receipt young lady also does the facility rentals, and then we have the whole finance office, which is IT falls under us. Finance, just go down the hallway, accounts payable, accounting assistant, payroll, and risk management all falls under, and then we have 3 meter readers and technicians, along with 2 part-time and 3 full-time clerks, plus the supervisor and the utility billing.
Now, you've had a chance to go to some of the Florida League of City meetings or the Northwest Florida Okaloosa County League of Cities, so you've had a chance to meet other people who do the similar job, and I gather you found that they're maybe all structured somewhat differently in different towns than even in Florida.
They are. Most of them, very few of them have utility billing. As a matter of fact, I found nobody, unless they're the only person in the city that does it, then they have utility billing, but very few of them. Usually, if they have a city manager, the finance falls under the city manager or even in a separate department. The personnel usually has a personnel, either falls under the city manager or they have an HR director who that falls under. IT usually falls under the city manager if there's a city manager. So it's not, again, we're the biggest city that has the same type of government that we have now. So it's an interesting, it develops into catch as catch can sometimes, who has to do what. Now, as far as the city clerk, we didn't have an IT director. We had a contract person when I started. We didn't have a IT department, which is, one person. But as we get further into modern technology, that's got to expand. The world is getting away from this and into the cloud. You've got to be able to keep up with that, so that's got to expand. HR gets more complicated every year because of rules and regulations and I lost the word, but
okay.
For human resources, laws change.
Sure.
Every year based on the latest lawsuit.
Whatever the state and counties want to get.
Right, or the person wouldn't want to do. Payroll, all that changes. Your competition amongst the cities for the same type of workers changes. Fortunately, I haven't had a whole lot of turnover at all in any of my departments, so that makes it nice and stable. We all work well together. We all get along well together. And most of the time I use my people because I've worked with them long enough now that they pretty much know what I'm going to say if they have a problem. So they take care of it, and then if there's an issue that they're not sure about, they'll come and talk to me. But it's that you have to rely on that staff. You can't do it all.
Right. But then there's also the other departments and some of their HR stuff. Does it come to you to deal with at any point, or does it kind of stay within each department?
The only thing that the different departments do is the actual hiring and firing. All applications have to come through our office and then are sent out to the department. Our office does the initial orientation, of course each department does their own training, but the initial hiring, paperwork, keeping up with payroll, all the payroll is processed through City Hall, all the insurance is processed through City Hall, any issues that have to be dealt with on a legal basis have to be done through our office and usually through my desk. So that's all, anything that's an HR problem or an HR, it has to come through our office. Everything is done through City Hall except for the actual hiring and firing and then individualized training.
Prior to applying for when the vacancy occurred when Ms. Young retired, what was your experience of any kind with government? Had you been attending council meetings or county meetings or any kind of stuff? I know you were active in the chamber type of work, but had you ever had anything in your career that got you closely acquainted with government operations before that?
Other than occasionally coming to meetings and talking and being familiar with some of the council members, we attended some meetings, and when an interesting subject, like most of the citizens of Crestview, they only come when it's, they're interested in it. But just watching it and reading it, never missed an election, always read the paper of, what was going on in the city. This was my city. I was here. I wasn't going anywhere. I moved here because I wanted to move here, and I wanted to be involved in it, as far as what was going on in the city. So I watched it, whether I came to meetings or not, pretty much knew what was going on in the city.
One of the things that people will ask is the city charter committee is going to be meeting here now and getting organized, and they've got technically 90 days to come up with an answer for what they're going to recommend. I know I sat through all of the charter review meetings that went on, I think it was about 6 years ago or so.
Between 9 and 12.
Yeah, and we, there were nights when it was just that committee and me in the audience as the news person actually there. A lot of public didn't show up. There were never a full room, ever. Never did we have that room full during a charter review committee meeting at any time. But the basic forms are either like the city has now, which is, I call it a hybrid, where you have a mayor that is not just one who goes out and does things and makes speeches, but he also does supervise 2 departments, and at least the last 2 mayors have almost made it a full-time job. Mr. Whitehurst had his business, but he spent a lot of time because he was able to because of his time. And, of course, he had been a mayor in his very young years also, way back when. And we could do a whole program on the things that he accomplished. And every mayor and every town get things done. You have the city manager form of government, and that has been talked about. Manager, or call them an administrator. The county, Okaloosa County, learned years ago the word manager was a scarier word, I'm going to call it, than administrator. The job duties were the same, but it was just a different title. And then they still have the authority that the council via the charter or the commissioners via the county organizations says. So some cities have a city manager. I think in Okaloosa County, are we one of the very few cities that does not have the city manager concept, I believe?
I believe
Laurel Hill does not now.
Laurel Hill doesn't, but most of the cities do. I mean, Defuniak has a city manager. Of course, they're not in Okaloosa County, but Niceville, Fort Walton, most of the cities have Destin all have a city manager type of government.
So what happens, it'll be up to the voters eventually, and that's the real question is, what can we do to get people to turn out and vote? I don't think I've seen an election where it was city ballots where we've ever passed a 20% voter turnout. That one time that the issue was on the ballot because of some, and I'll be talking about how that happened in one of our broadcasts and why that got messed up a couple of years ago. But there was a bigger vote because it was on a bigger election, but it was like a straw ballot rather than the actual commitment. But usually, this last one, of course, we just had the one council race. It was very, very embarrassing. 3% something.
3.8.
3.8%. Wow, almost 4.
Yeah,
almost 4.
If the city clerk is not on the ballot, the years that you're not on the ballot every other 2 years, or if you run unopposed like I did this last time, you're on the canvassing board. So you get to sit and go through the ballots and check those type of things. But I think 534, and 2 of those were invalid. I noticed, I think it was almost 1,300 the year that I had to run, or 1,600 the year that I ran. But it's like I said, I never missed one, and it was before the days of social media when all this information. If you're interested, you ought to know what's going on. And even if you don't read the paper, or, sorry, Cal, listen to the radio, and you're a social media person, you can attach yourself to the supervisor of the elections Facebook or website, and you get those notifications. They have legal responsibilities. They have to run ads in the paper. They have to run ads in the paper advertising how much it will cost you to run for the city position. They have to run ads in the paper saying when the elections are going to be. they send out, unless you have an absentee ballot, unless you're on the absentee ballot list, you get a sample ballot. You know, if you think it's propaganda, or not propaganda, but advertisement, and don't open it, but everybody who does not get an absentee ballot that's on the voter registration is mailed a sample ballot. Granted, this time it was very short, but
Okay. Now, I think you have shown me some figures before you might want to share with our listeners and viewers as to the ranges of the population versus what the city clerks in these other towns and parts of Florida get.
Just some judge numbers. The low salary in our close area, it starts at 30,000 and goes up to about 72,000. Now, one of those city clerks has been there forever, so that's not fair. But again, we're the highest population city, so the median salary for here is about, this job is about a median salary for this area. For a city this size, probably not. But you know, when you sign up for a job, you do it based on what you know you're going to get paid. And
well, if I don't know if you've looked it up or if you can find out, if we were a business, $35 million a year business, what would a CFO earn typically in a business of that size anywhere in Okaloosa County even?
a lot more than I make.
Okay.
I mean, you know, depending on a CFO or a CEO is going to make bonuses. They're going to have benefits. They're going to have other things just besides the base salary. Being an elected position, part-time, elected position, you know, you don't get any benefits. I do have access to personal health care. That's the only benefit that any elected official is allowed to have.
Right.
Not family, not anything else. Everything else is you're allowed to have that. You have to pay your dental, you have to pay your vision if you have that. But you don't get any retirement. There's no, unless you've been here 20 years, there's no retirement. There's no funding going into a retirement. So when you're done, you're done.
Do you have any opinions of your own whether the city of Crestview should have either an elected city clerk as it is now, or that the city council should be hiring a finance director or a financial officer? And of course that could change if the voters were to decide that we would have a city manager and restructure it with financing, as you mentioned, being under the management part of the city. No,
when I was interviewed for this job in December of 2011, the charter was supposed to be on the ballot in 2012. And one of the questions that I was asked, because I didn't have to run until 2013, one of the questions I was asked that's, you know, the city clerk is up to be changed from election to appointed. Did I have any problems with that? And I'm like, no, because I intend to do the type of job that would get me reappointed if it changed from elected to appointed. So the only difference between that now is you're having 5 people decide if you're going to stay, or 16,000 people decide if you're going to stay. But you have to do the job based on where you are right then, not whether or not, you know, my understanding is with the current thing, if they decide to change it, that can't change until the end of my term. That's what I've always been told. That's from current and previous supervisor of elections. I've understand from them that you can lengthen a term. You can eliminate a position. If they eliminate the clerk's position, then obviously that term would end. But you can't cut somebody off that's been elected even if they were elected unopposed. But at the end of that 4 years, it could be changed. If you go back and look at the charter that was on the straw ballot, this position, because of the election term and the time, that position at that point did not end or become appointed until April 1st, 2017 in that current charter change. So that's the way it would have to be, from my understanding, the way it works. And in talking to, like I said, the former supervisor of elections, that you can't decrease the term. Right. You know, if somebody shows, whether it's written anywhere, I know that's for lawyers to decide.
Right. Well, I know, of course, Crestview has 3 councilmen elected at one election, and that election we just had, but there was just one race where there was opposition. That was 3 on the ballot. 3 were appointed. So the next election, 2 council members who I guess have the at-large post, and the mayor and the clerk would be on. So that is.
Clerk was on the past. I was on with the 3 council members.
Okay, and unopposed, that's right, so you really weren't on there, okay. So you're serving now in a 4-year term, okay. Well, I'm going to say, like I'm going to ask everybody, if you could wave your magic wand over Crestview, what would you like to see Crestview be over the next 5 or 10 years as a city, as a community?
Continued growth. If you drive down 85, all you see is building and building. I would like to see downtown flourish, take off, become a vibrant downtown, and you and I have talked about that a lot. So I think the master plan that the Atkins group came up with the CRA is a good start for that. I'd like to see that implemented, whatever happens with the CRA director, that not fall by the wayside. And actual work being done. The partnership between the city and the county has improved in the 5 years since I've been here. The partnership between Main Street and the city has greatly improved, and everybody looks to be working towards the same goal. Vibrant Crestview, I think, with the courthouse being open, downtown's going to take up. And just in restaurants, I can't imagine somebody not looking at this going, January of next year, that thing's going to open in July. I need to start looking for a good restaurant where people can go after work. The zoning has changed to get people to stay upstairs. If I owned a business downtown or I owned a building downtown, I'm like, what can I do to get somebody to live in there? Let's take downtown into a beautiful downtown area. It's a great little downtown. And I'm talking to someone who's been here for years, grew up here, and they said they think downtown's derelict now. They should have been here 20 years ago because it was terrible. So we are in the right direction. We just need to do more, go after it. You get that 50-50 thing. You've got, I want to do this. I need this much money. I only have this much. Yeah. So you have to, that's the balancing act of what can we do without putting the city into debt and move forward and make it vibrant, not just on the outskirts, what you were talking about earlier. If you look, the growth is going north of Auburn Road. Mm-hmm. That's county, that's not city, but this is the area downtown that's got to be, this is the growth area. There's not a whole lot of open space on 85 within the city limits. Mm-hmm. Downtown is the potential for growth, at least as far as small business or with major department stores, doubt it. Small businesses, good restaurants, nightlife, whatever it needs to take to make downtown more vibrant.
Yeah, and of course, we're now getting the city into this next phase of getting the zoning done to match the land use plan that some of us got started on, and it finally happened where we can have multiple family living or multiple people's apartments or whatever, condos in the downtown area. And of course, I've shown this before on previous Z files, and this is a building in a little town up in just outside of Atlanta, and it's on the old Highway 41 about 5 to 6 miles west of Interstate 75, and that's an existing building that people live in, the upstairs, but right down the street from there is a brand new complex of over 250 new apartments that have been built since 2015, and they call it Revival on Main. And in my Z-Files newsletters, I've had some of these pictures and links to the things you can read about. And of course, in this pretty picture, that's what is inside the courtyard of those 250 plus apartments on Main Street in historic old Kennesaw, Georgia. And as I travel around from time to time, I get to go to other places to visit friends, and I see other places are doing similar things. And the idea is, and I even could quote from one of the things the mayor up there made, the phrase is, they just announced last month a new 38 townhome community at Depot Park. Their historic board managed to get $150,000 to repair, restore the old depot that was part of the Civil War battles, and there's now a park there. And here's going to be 38 townhomes overlooking the park and the depot. They're going to be about 1,900 square feet. They're going to sell from $230,000 to $250,000. 3 stories, 2-car garage, and then 3 floors you live up above. I remember being in a place called, I think it's Cahoba Village on 280, just east of downtown Birmingham last year, and I went to a shopping center, and there were people. I saw barbecue grills and cookout grills above all the whole shopping center. There were people living up there. There were probably 50 condominiums or townhomes up there. So things like that can happen that brings people to the core. And you think about just the jobs in the courthouse. And I know I've talked with people with our FAMU over here who would love to have a condo or a townhouse right downtown. So maybe with this rezoning and some revitalization, that may be something in our foreseeable future.
Let's hope. I mean, it's like I said, the downtown area and surrounding areas within the city is one of the few places that can grow. You know, the one area just north of the old Publix that's expanding, that was one of the few lots, and it's being built up now with 3 different buildings. The new Publix up north, the new Walmart, which will hopefully be part of the city at one point once they annex. So there's going to be, and one thing you have to understand is people fuss. We don't need another Walmart. Well, that's not the choice of the city. That's the choice of the people who decide they want to come here. Well, we want a Red Lobster. Well, that's Red Lobster's choice. Mm-hmm. You know, that's not the city's. It's not people. We invite everybody. Mm-hmm. We want everybody to come, but it's the corporate planners, the investors, all that. They're the ones that decide whether or not this is a viable place for them to come to.
Right. Well, they do the same thing. They get all the statistical data, and they know where that population is. They know which census tracts are growing, where there's new homes being built, new apartments going up. So it is the developers, and there are some businesses in the restaurant trade and some of the big department stores are not building new locations anywhere in America, not just here, not anywhere. But then there are those who are. So we get the ones who do want to come here. We'll see what happens.
Look at the statistics. Every day you open up the paper, well, Sears is closing stores because everybody's buying online. Penny's is closing stores because, you know, the name brands are closing stores, not opening stores. Mm-hmm. So that's the trend. People don't want to go out and go shopping. So we're going to have to look at things coming in, like I said, a vibrant downtown where people can go in and have fun rather than going shopping. Mm-hmm. The rocks thing, and I don't know if you're aware of this Crestview rocks and Okaloosa rocks things. You walk down Main Street this afternoon, you're going to see a bunch of families out there with kids hunting for rocks. So, I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
What people want to do, and then they go home and they post pictures because they're having family time painting. So we're not walking around with the phones anymore looking for Pokemon. They're walking around and looking around and seeing things. So promoting that kind of stuff, and I've actually painted a few rocks myself and put them out with them okay. for people to find. But it's just fun. It's just encouraging that kind of family time and getting out and doing stuff, and that seems to be, hopefully that trend will continue because it seems to be a good family event that we haven't had in a while.
And one of the issues that everybody talks about again is all the traffic and where we're going to put them or where the roads. At least that's one area you don't have to spend a lot of your time worrying about because that goes to other departments. And you don't have to say where we're going to get the money and where we're going to build a street that's either or a road.
Yeah, fortunately, I mean, sometimes I have to figure out where they're going to get the money from, but that's not, planning is not one of my
Well, Ms. Roy, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And folks, keep watching here on the Z-Files channel on the YouTube or listening in on Saturday mornings, and we will continue to visit with our next guest we'll be talking with in our next week's show will be Mayor David Cadle, and we'll talk about what he thinks about a change to the city charter. And the magic thing is, how are we going to get those of you who are registered to vote? And I think the numbers I had here, that in Crestview, and the last number I got from Paul Lux, as of May 22nd, we had 13,547 active voters. There are people on voter lists but haven't voted for 2 or more 4-year cycles, but they're still there until there's a certain time cycle when they can purge the list. But then we got to get more of those out than the couple of thousand we've been averaging over the last several years voting in city elections. And that's the Z-Files for this time around.